Up, here we go. Folks are coming in. Good evening, everyone. We're just going to wait a few moments here for some folks to filter in. I want to give everybody a chance. Happy Hanukkah, by the way. Hope everybody is safe. Just bear with us. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. Let me know if you're having any questions hearing me. There's a Q&A button on the bottom. You could send me a message and I'll be able to respond to you that way. And I also wanted to inform all of you who are just joining, this meeting is going to be recorded, just so you all know, so it could be posted on the Streets LA, either Twitter or website in case anybody misses this. And also this same exact meeting will be done again after the holidays in January. So in case you have any neighbors or friends, any local business owners who are not able to attend tonight, we will be doing this exact same meeting again in January. Go ahead and get started. It looks like everybody's filtered in at this point. Debbie, Kevin, can you guys hear me okay? Jeff? Okay, perfect. All right, so good evening again, everyone. Happy holidays, happy Hanukkah. Hope everyone is staying safe during this kind of uptick in COVID. Please continue to be vigilant. Stay indoors as much as you can, wear your masks. Please just continue to follow the CDC guidelines. I am Alexander Cayozo, for those of you who haven't met me before virtually. I'm a landscape architect and a project manager with the City of Los Angeles Bureau of Street Services. And actually our nickname, which I think some of you probably heard by now, is Streets LA, kind of a shorter, snappier new name for Bureau of Street Services. We are here this evening to discuss the funded $3 million grant project for the Melrose Avenue Pedestrian Improvement Project, from Highland Avenue to Fairfax Avenue. And before we get into it, I wanted to introduce our panel. Maybe first, Jeff Palmer, do you want to introduce yourself? Say hello.
Yeah, hi, my name is Jeff Palmer. I'm with Streets LA. I'm a landscape architect, and I work with Alexander on this Melrose project. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone.
Thanks, Jeff. And Martin, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, Martin Schlager, Director of External Relations at Streets LA.
And then Derek, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Derek Lee, civil engineer at Streets LA.
Great. And last but certainly not least, the council office, Debbie Diner-Harris and Kevin Nahai.
Hi there, I'm Debbie Diner-Harris. I'm Councilmember Koretz's District Director.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin. I am the field deputy for this area, including Melrose, for Councilmember Koretz. Pleasure to see you all.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. And so just in case you folks didn't hear, during the presentation, you are actually able to write in questions into the Q&A box. So I'm already seeing a few questions already start to pop through. Continue typing your questions, anything that comes up, any concern, any question, anything about this project. We'll be able to do our best to answer them at the end. And if we can't, we could, you can also email us afterwards as well. There's an email on our website. In addition, at the end of Jeff's presentation, we're also going to have the opportunity where you guys can raise your hand. There's a little hand raise symbol, and I'll let you know when it's time for that. And we're actually going to open up the virtual meeting to as many as folks as we can. For you'll have the floor for 2 minutes to be able to ask Jeff and myself or the council office direct questions, and we're again going to try to answer them as best as possible. And I will give you a 30-second kind of heads up warning in your 2 minutes so you don't feel like we're cutting you off. Jeff, would you want to go to the next slide? So again, I'm Alexander with the Bureau of Street Services. And I think a lot of folks, it gets a little confusing when we say the city, who we are, what we do, and all these different groups. So we thought it'd be beneficial to show you guys who we are and what we do as a bureau and where we're coming from and how we actually get grants in the city. So the Bureau of Street Services is actually one of the 5 bureaus in the Department of Public Works. So if you actually look at this tier, the top tier would be the Office of the Mayor and the council offices. Below that would be the Board of Public Works. And then below that are the 5 Department of Public Works bureaus. I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of these. Bureau of Street Services, which is our group, Bureau of Street Lighting, who manage and install street lighting throughout the city of Los Angeles, Bureau of Engineering, who work on infrastructure projects in the city, Contract Administration, who actually do a fantastic job on issuing permits and enforcement within the city, and Department of Sanitation, the folks who actually come and pick up your trash every week. But tonight we're here to talk about who we are, Bureau of Street Services, and the project that we're actually going to be bringing to Melrose Avenue from Highland to Fairfax. So the Bureau of Street Services is actually comprised of multiple divisions, but the 2 divisions I wanted to talk about are the Design Build Division and the Urban Forestry Division. Within the Design Build Division, there are landscape architects, civil engineers, grant writers, and a construction team. Hence design build. When you say design, we have landscape architects and civil engineers. And the build portion, we actually have our own in-house construction team, which is really amazing. We're actually the only group, and I believe one of the only ones in the country that has a design build group within the city. And we partner with most of the agencies that we mentioned up here, the bureaus, as well as LADOT and business improvement districts such as the Melrose bid, council offices and community groups. And in addition, another very significant important division within our bureau is the Urban Forestry Division. These are the folks that actually trim our street trees, plant trees in the city. They're the ones who are installing the landscape and irrigation on our grant funded projects. And they're the ones kind of keeping the city clean and green. Let's see. And here. Jeff, can you go to the next page? Great. I wanted to talk a little bit and clear up any maybe confusion on the Melrose Avenue Pedestrian Improvement Project. Some of you may be familiar with a previous project grant application that we were working on, which was the Uplift Melrose Project. This, and I'm going to be very clear, this is not the Uplift Melrose Project. It is within the same footprint of that project. However, I'm going to go back on that timeline a little bit and then show you where we're going with this. Okay, so in 2014, 2015, there was an application that was put together for a $3.9 million Metro Call for Projects grant, which was to fund, which is what we're here to talk about tonight, the Melrose Avenue pedestrian improvement projects. That was roughly in winter, spring of 2015. Actually, prior to that application, though, there was extensive community outreach with assistance from the council office, CD5, as well as the Melrose Business Improvement District. So the grant that you're actually seeing tonight, some of you may actually be familiar with this. The elements that are part of this grant were actually shown to the community about 6 years ago. So now we actually finally have that money and we're ready to start implementing the design and the construction. So by 2015, in that summer to January 2016, the award and funding process went through with Metro, and we've been working with the city. And then the coordination and design process started in 2019. So some of you may say, well, how did we go from 2016 to 2019? Why is there that gap? What was the city doing in that time? And actually, it wasn't what we were doing. It's actually when the funding was originally allocated. Even though it was a 2015 grant, the money was always earmarked to be funded for the year 2019-2020. So that may seem like a long period, But actually in the grand scheme of things, if you look further down on this at the end, we're actually going to be done with construction in 2023. I wanted to go a little bit back. In January of 2020, in working with the council office and the bid, we actually started looking into how we could potentially supplement our existing already funded $3.9 million grant. So in looking at that, we were thinking, well, how could we actually, again, supplement, and what elements could we look at to create further improvements on the boulevard or on the avenue? We started looking at the Mayor's Vision Zero plan and the Mobility 2035 plan, and realized that we potentially could have additional improvements on Melrose. So in March of 2020 to September of 2020, we were applying for an additional grant to actually supplement and add a few additional features for Melrose. However, in September of 2020, it was the council office's decision to not go through with that application to Caltrans. So we are now actually moving back to our original $3.9 million grant, which is, again, already funded, which is fantastic. And we are now coming back to the community to show you what the grant is about and where we're going to be going with it. And again, this is just the first meeting. Keep this in mind. This is just the first meeting. There's going to be plenty more community outreach. We have from December 2020 now till July 2021. So we have about 6 to 7 months of community outreach that we're going to be coming to the community to get your feedback on elements such as colors and aesthetics and design and what type of benches and what type of furnishings and wayfinding signage. This is your street, the neighbors, the residents, the businesses of Melrose. This is not Jeff's street, this is not my street. So we want to hear from you folks, like what you're going to want to see on Melrose. However, tonight, just again to make it clear, our intent tonight is to show you what the grant is about and where we're going. And there's going to be plenty more opportunities to talk about aesthetics and little details in further meetings. Next slide, Jeff. Fantastic. Now I'm actually going to turn it over to Jeff. He's going to start getting into the project scope and where we're going to be going with this.
Thanks so much, Alexander, and thanks for all that great background information. Hope that really helps folks understand where we are. Again, my name is Jeff Palmer. I work with Alexander at Streets LA. I'm a landscape architect, and I'm working on this Melrose Avenue pedestrian improvements project. I want to talk a little bit more about the project scope and what's in it and our plans and what we're going to implement. So if you can see the text here on the screen, I'll just run through it. New shade trees and new and enlarged tree wells throughout the entire corridor of this project area, which, as Alexander stated, is Melrose Avenue from Fairfax to Highland. Trees are in pretty poor shape in a lot of stretches, and in many stretches have no trees. And it's quite exposed, quite hot, quite uncomfortable. So we're planning on implementing trees throughout. Gateway signage, also wayfinding signage, which is signage that's probably going to be more at the pedestrian scale. Gateway signage being more at the automotive scale, basically signs for cars. Street furnishings, as Alexander touched on, benches, trash cans, things like that. Pedestrian level lights at bus zones. We might talk a little bit more about lighting, but the reason that these lights are focused at the bus zones is, again, that this is a Metro funded grant, and it's for pedestrian improvements relative to transit. So that's an important thing to bear in mind. And that is something that we're actually constrained by the grant to provide. So that's why we are focusing our lighting improvements at those bus zones. Sidewalk widening and replacement on Melrose from Orange Grove to Ogden on both sides of the street. That's 1 block of sidewalk widening. The sidewalks there are very narrow, 7 feet wide. They're actually not the most safe condition for pedestrians. And so we have room there, and we will partner with our associates at Department of Transportation to implement that with as little impact as possible on traffic. Sidewalk replacement at 12 bus stops throughout the corridor. So these are these bus stop improvements that you've heard us speak about. And then curb ramps proximal to those bus stop improvements. Curb ramps are the little ramps that allow every person in Los Angeles to be able to access safely the sidewalks and streets of Los Angeles, which is a major priority, and it shows up in all the work we do, always. I also now want to show you just kind of some sketches of what these changes might look like. These are rough sketches, but they hopefully will give you an idea. Oh, first I want to show the project. I forgot about my map here. This is kind of showing where the implementation is going to take place. The project area is outlined in the dashed blue line. As you can see, Fairfax to Highland along Melrose. The bus stop improvements, one near Fairfax, near Melrose and Spalding. Those are those red squares. Gardner, Poinsettia, La Brea, and Highland. You can see our 1 block long sidewalk widening area and that kind of greenish triangle across in front of Fairfax High School. And then the little green circles are a representation of our shade trees throughout the Melrose corridor. So speaking of trees, this is a sketch showing trees throughout. This is, I believe, at Stanley, or is it Spalding? Stanley. Just to provide that shade I talked about, cool down the street on those hot days and kind of unify our improvements along the entire corridor of the project area. Bus stop improvements, again, replacing concrete, replacing sidewalks, and just bringing lighting in as well. This is just a rough sketch. And then the sidewalk widening. And again, more trees you can see here implemented along the street. So with that, I think I'm going to hand it back to Alexander, and he's going to talk a little bit more about some numbers.
Thanks, Jeff. That was great. Okay, so again, as I mentioned in the beginning when I was speaking, we have an overall budget of $3.9 million. And I know a lot of folks will say, well, where is that money going? How is that money getting spent? So we have done kind of a broader breakdown, and then we've done a smaller breakdown so you can really see how the city is spending the money for this grant and how it's going all back to Melrose Avenue. So right now, if you look at that 3.9 million total, we have it broken down into 3 major categories. The first category being planning, design, community outreach, and engineering. So community outreach, this is one of our meetings tonight. This actually, to prepare this presentation, takes a lot of design time, a lot of hours, a lot of preparation. The planning for this, all of the coordination with all the different entities, with all the different bureaus. And then once we get into the actual heavy design process, working with our civil engineering team, other landscape architects on our team, et cetera. There's 2 separate funding sources for that. One is the actual grant funding source, which is $293,000. And the second are local funds. It's called a local match. So that total is $390,000 has been allocated towards the planning, design, outreach, and engineering portion. In regards to project management, which is basically going to be Jeff out in the field, Jeff working with the community, Jeff working with our construction crews, myself working with our civil engineering staff, our landscape architecture staff, all of that time, all of those energies, working with the council office, working with different community groups, et cetera. The grant funds are $122,000 and local matching funds are $72,000 with a total of $195,000 on that. And the actual construction, the construction by our, which I'm very proud of, our own city construction crews and our city landscape crews and arborists and plumbers. That overall total is 3.319 million. 2.5 million or so is from the grant, and the local match is 775. So a lot of you may say, okay, well, what actually goes into construction? Where does that $3 million go? May sound like a lot of money, but actually Melrose is a pretty long stretch. And there's the bus zones that Jeff talked about, the widening that you talked about, all of the trees that will take major forces, major city forces, major design time, and major construction efforts to actually implement all of that. So Jeff, you can go to that next slide for me. Well, thank you. Okay, perfect. So this is a breakdown. Again, the overall total budget is 3.9. However, the construction budget is 3.3. So this is a breakdown of the $3.3 million budget just for construction and the construction management. So for mobilization and traffic control, we've estimated approximately $75,000. For the demolition, this is when our crews are going to be out there with their tractors, with their jackhammers, et cetera, removing that old sidewalk in the bus zones, removing the sidewalk in the narrow sidewalk areas. We're actually going to be upgrading those sidewalks to standard 11-foot, 12-foot wide sidewalks, removing the old street where we actually have to widen the sidewalk out, etc. All of that demolition alone, about $285,000. Utility relocations. It's interesting to me. Sometimes I'll drive by a project and I haven't been there in 6 months and it's magically done. It's new sidewalks and it's new trees and you're like, oh, it's awesome. But sometimes I even myself forget what it actually takes to move a sidewalk, widen a sidewalk, put in a new access ramp, put in trees. So when we're widening the sidewalk and doing access ramp work, sometimes we actually have to move storm drains and catch basins. We actually have to relocate traffic signals. Since we're widening the sidewalk out, that traffic signal no longer can be sitting in the middle of an old sidewalk. We actually need to move it further out. So utility relocations, it takes time, it takes efforts, it takes energies, and it takes design time. So that's $75,000. The new hardscape, we're widening those sidewalks. We're going to be repairing the street where we've bumped out the sidewalks, putting in new access ramps at the bus zones, making hardscape improvements at the bus zones, and then repairing where our street lighting partners are actually going to be implement lighting at the bus zones. So our goal is for those bus zones to look clean and safe and be really well lit at night. So all of those efforts, $875,000. Jeff mentioned, as you can see in those fantastic renderings, new trees along the corridor and widening those existing old tree wells. That's so important. New trees alone are great, but actually we want to give a little more life to the trees that are still out there. Our goal is only to remove trees that are sick, dying, or unhealthy. We really do not want to be removing trees that for any just like, oh, it's not a beautiful tree. We want to keep Melrose as green as possible, shady and cool as possible. And we want to continue to give the existing trees that are out there as much life and growth as possible. So we're actually going to be widening the majority of the existing tree wells to give them a little more breathing room, more wiggle room, and the chance of them not lifting up the sidewalk as much. New site furnishings, Jeff did mention this. We have a range of $330,000 to $400,000 budgeted for that. And actually, we have a range actually on the trees as well, because in future community meetings, the community is going to have a choice of potentially larger trees versus a different aesthetic signage, or smaller trees versus a different aesthetic bike rack, etc. So there is going to be a little wiggle room. The community is going to be able to weigh in on what they want to see in regards to the trees and the aesthetics of their avenue. So we've left wiggle room in the budget to work with you folks and get your feedback on aesthetic and choices and size and design. None of that's been determined yet. It's still all very open-ended, which is really exciting for us. Again, I mentioned utility relocations. It's something that you maybe don't notice, that it's so integral just to be able to drive and walk down Melrose without actually putting those signals back in the correct place. You're not going to be able to safely cross at Orange Grove, or you're not going to be able to safely stop at a red light at Orange Grove or Ogden. So all of those upgrades, replacing striping, fixing the red curb striping, fixing the crosswalk striping, all of those upgrades, $230,000. Actually, I believe there might be, let's see, the utility relocation construction. Actually, we can disregard that one. I believe that's a mistake on my end. I apologize for the 85 there. Roadway lighting, relocation, reconstruction. Jeff did mention the bus stop lighting, which we're really excited about. All of the bus stops on Melrose will be getting upgraded lighting. Jeff, did you mention, we may have missed this, that some of the bus zones are actually changing per metro? Jeff?
I didn't mention that.
Okay. Metro has actually come out with a plan where they're actually going to be minimizing bus zones that are actually underutilized or actually creating hazards on avenues. So they're actually looking at Melrose Avenue as an opportunity for bus zones that are actually less used or create traffic problems. So in the end, once Melrose is done, we're only going to end up with 12 bus stops on Melrose Avenue. And I believe right now there's 15 or 16. So the 12 bus zones, the future 12 bus zones, will be getting lighting upgrades by our partners at BSL, and that's $645,000. And then for the construction management and costs, which is our time working with our construction crews, our construction crew, project managers, etc., $150,000. And then we always leave a cushion in grants. So we do have a little bit of extra money in the end in case there's an additional utility that needs to be moved, in case we need to add an extra tree, in case we need 2 other benches because the community asked for it further down. So we do have a nice little cushion of $270,000 at the back end of the project. Okay. I believe that is all I have. And now actually that's a good transition point. You know, we've been talking about where we're doing the improvements, and the majority of the improvements are in fact at the bus zones on Melrose and the widening at Ogden to Orange Grove. However, I was going to ask Debbie if she wanted to talk a little bit about how the council office is going to be helping us fix some of the other sidewalks that as you walk down Melrose that are cracked, broken, trip hazards, etc., how the council office is able to help us on that.
Thank you, Alexander. So the council member is very excited about this grant program, and he wanted to increase its opportunities and abilities to do some of those things which we know people need and want in their community. And he is donating $100,000 from his own office funds, from our street furniture revenue funds, to supplement Streets LA's work. So we are looking at doing some of that sidewalk improvement in between the bus stops, which wouldn't get that much attention. So where there's cracked sidewalks and holes, and where there's lifted sidewalks, all those kinds of things, that money can be used for that. And if there's other things that Streets LA finds they desperately need, we can utilize their discretion, and we can give that money to those things as well. So $100,000 in the scheme of the world, we know sounds like a lot, but it actually is not very much. So, you know, he's very excited. He wishes that he could give more, but he has limited funds. And so he's very, very excited to do this much. And if there's an opportunity to weigh in with more money later on down the line, he will do that as well. But this is his way of helping to kick off this project and support the Melrose Avenue community.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you, Debbie. The other plus side of that additional money is potentially, depending on the availability of our construction crews, and really no promises at this point, but if our construction crews are available sooner before the actual construction of our other improvements on Melrose, we potentially could get onto Melrose and start doing some of those really important repairs and actually creating some safer walking spaces along Melrose. Again, we would need to work with our construction crews right now. A lot of issues going on with the city with COVID and budget, etc. But ideally, I'd like to be able to get in there a little sooner. Since it's just sidewalk repair, it's a very simple thing that Jeff and I can manage and actually get in there and get done. And then we would come in afterwards and start doing the more, what I'd call the flashier, the more kind of more aesthetic improvements on those that you're going to see as you drive and walk by. I think now would actually be a good time to let's answer some of our questions. Some folks have been dropping some questions in our Q&A box. And then if you have either questions that you want to write to us, we can answer, or in the next 10 minutes or so, we will open up the room if you want to actually speak, and I'll give you 2 minutes each to speak. And again, with a 30-second warning, so you don't feel like I'm cutting you off. So you can start raising your hands now and hitting the little hand raise button, and I'll monitor that. But right now we're going to start answering some of the Q&A box questions. Okay. All right, so Jennifer A. Gill says she loves the trees. However, she doesn't see any mention of the bicyclists. Bicyclists be a part of the wider sidewalks, or okay. Right, so this project is a pedestrian improvement project. So the focus, Jennifer, is on the improvements at the bus zones and the sidewalks and widening the sidewalks near Fairfax High School. The bikes were not part of the original grant, but a bike lane or protected bike lanes. We will be adding bike parking, which would be typical bike racks or potentially artistic style bike racks. But no, we aren't going to be adding any infrastructure for bikes within this grant. Okay. I see a question from John, and I apologize, Gabaldon. It looks like there's something a question about parking. Debbie, are you able to see this question about parking?
Yes.
Yeah. Would you
So
be able
adding
to
a
answer that
shared
better?
parking. So I think this is something, so I don't know if the whole world can see these, But
I don't think so, no. I
okay.
think these were just
So-
sent to us.
So John's asking about adding a shared parking garage at Fairfax High with a 2-hour parking for patrons for a low fee, as well as possibly doing it with the other school on Melrose over by Detroit. So this is something I know that the Business Improvement District has been working on, is creating these shared parking areas, and that's a great question. We can, I don't know if we want to answer that here now, but I know Kevin, your field deputy, who's also on the panel, he may be able to talk with you offline about that, unless you want to talk about it now, Alexander. I don't, I'll let you take the lead on that.
Well, probably offline, probably would be better about the parking, yeah.
Okay, so
I think
Kevin
so.
will chat with you, and then he'll connect you with the right thing.
Perfect. Okay. All right, there is a question which I believe we answered. We would like to widen the sidewalks across the street from Fairfax High School. Yeah, again, in Jeff's concept, and then what we actually were funded for, we will be widening the sidewalk from Ogden to Orange Grove on both the north and south sides of the street. Right now, any additional widenings or on Melrose aren't part of this grant. But again, we are widening from Orange Grove to Ogden. Someone's asking here, what's the status of the crosswalk set for Orange and Stanley? The Hawk. Oh, okay. So at Orange Grove and Stanley, there's been conversations with our partners at LADOT regarding different signals and upgrade signals. That is not part of our grant currently. So I know there's some offline conversations that have been happening between the council office and LADOT, or maybe I'm speaking for you, Debbie, about this, but I know that this is not part of our grant, additional traffic signals or upgraded traffic signals at Stanley.
We are waiting on that funding to come through.
Thank you. And then Shelby Blecker is asking, will the design outreach be similar to what was done with the Great Streets in the Sorrow neighborhood? I apologize, Shelby, I'm not really familiar with how the outreach was done for the Great Streets project, but our outreach will continue in a similar format where when we know our next community meeting is going to be held, we are informing the council office, all of the neighborhood councils, the Business Improvement District, as well as anybody who's signed up for any meetings from the past from our Uplift Melrose project and these meetings tonight. You give us your email, you will get an invitation to further community meetings. So, and as much as I would love to be in a room with everybody again and actually presenting in person, our meetings will continue to be virtual, and I foresee them probably to be virtual until the summer at least, which is when our community outreach will be tying up. And again, Shelby asks, will the trees be mature when they are installed? They won't be 100% mature. They will be, but they also won't be what I would call like a planned community little stick tree. We found that those don't do very well in the public right of way. People tend to be a little aggressive. The smaller, really small trees don't do very well with dogs and other things that people may put into a tree well, etc. So we will be looking into trees that are potentially larger than our typical 24-inch box tree. And we're going to discuss tree size in other future meetings because we're going to actually be looking to the community for choice. Because we're going to actually be looking at the budget of, are bigger trees more important, or are different aesthetics, higher end aesthetics for your wayfinding signage, different types of furnishings, etc. So that's all going to be part of your choice as we get further into meetings. Somebody has asked, will the parking between North Orange Grove and Ogden be removed in order to widen the sidewalk? If so, have the merchants been advised or been made aware of? It's a very good question. So actually right now we're in initial design conversations with our partners at LADOT. Worst case scenario, we will lose parking between Orange Grove and Ogden. Worst case scenario, which would be all 6 spots between Orange Grove and Ogden on the north side only. Worst case. Best case, we lose 1. But right now, we are just starting to work in the design and what actually needs to happen in order to make those sidewalk widenings work. It's a tricky little spot there because there's an existing left turn pocket that goes into the Fairfax High parking lot, and that driveway is heavily used for the Sunday swap meet. So we're looking to see design-wise what can actually change there and what can actually happen in regards to the striping and in regards to the parking. So we're going to be coming back in future meetings with what we're looking at and the options that we have for there. Okay, someone is asking, is Metro in the city planning on moving the 10 stop on the near side of Spalding, northeast corner, to the northwest corner? I don't know of a stop on the far side currently. Okay. Jeff, can you recall at Spalding, are one of the bus stops relocating?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah, so the bus stops that you folks are seeing at this point is the most current that Metro has given us. So if Metro is moving any stops, this is what we've been given at this point. Someone asked, Deborah Bloom asked, what about the alleys? I'm not sure what about the alleys, but again, our scope of work for our grant is just on Melrose from Highland to Fairfax, and it's focusing on the existing pedestrian scape, the pedestrian sidewalk space, which is from that building property line to the curb line of the sidewalk space.
Alexander, I'll follow up with Deborah and John about the alleys.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Can string lights be added to trees for lighting ambiance? That's a great question. So our grant cannot fund string lighting. However, that is something that the community can work on. That's something that the community can work with the council office or the business improvement district. And from what I understand, there's already been some conversations about doing some pilot projects of string lighting at, which street is it, Debbie? Or I'd have to actually,
I
sorry.
don't remember which block it was.
I didn't mean to catch you off guard.
That's okay.
But I do know that there's always already some conversations about adding those string lights similar to what we've seen in downtown or similar on Cahuenga in Hollywood. But again, I recommend working with the council office, working with the business improvement district on that, as this is not part of our grant in regards to the lighting. Any plan for food establishment along the sidewalk area? What about cleaning and maintaining the area? Okay. So I'm not sure what the question is about food establishments along the sidewalk area means. We are not widening the sidewalks outside of Orange Grove to Ogden. So the space that is already in front of restaurants to the 10, 12, 14-foot sidewalk space is the space that will remain. So if folks already have their outdoor dining permit, or if they did have that additional permit that was given to them during COVID to have dining, but we were not going to be adding additional sidewalk dining space. The other question was, what about cleaning and maintaining the area? We're actually going to be working with the council office and the business improvement district on identifying partners, folks who are actually going to water the trees, actually going to keep those tree wells clean. Our goal is we never plant trees unless there is a partner on board, because our bureau, as you folks know right now, we are going through a lot right now within the city of Los Angeles with our general budget, and funding sources are changing constantly. So before we plant the trees, we will be working with the council office, working with the business improvement district on, as well as the neighborhood councils on getting partners on board to keep the trees watered, etc. And let's see. Right. There's a question about bike corrals, if they could be added. Can have more trees in street furniture zone. I'm sorry. It's hard to, can we explore bike corrals at locations if it means we can have more trees in the street furniture zone? I'm not sure how the trees and bike corral. Oh, I see the bike corrals within the street, which is a Metro funded program. If that's what you're referring to, there's a separate program with bike corrals, which are the bike charging stations. I'm not 100% sure what the question is though, because that Metro program is separate, and that's actually that's not a free program. That's actually a separate funded program, and each one of those Metro stations costs about $80,000. I'm sorry, they're responding again, like you could have a bike corral on the street. Let me get back to that bike question. Not bike share. Okay, just a bike corral. Okay, I see. We'll look into that actually in regards to bike parking. Similar to, we'll look into the bike parking. Yeah, we'll get more into details on that. I understand your question now. I apologize. Okay. And will vehicle lanes be taken away with this plan? No, we will not be taking vehicle lanes away with this plan. This is a sidewalk improvement project, but we will not be taking vehicle lanes away. Christina Lehman has asked, curious if this plan includes adding a stoplight to the intersection at Melrose and Genesee. Right now, there is only a crosswalk, but it gets incredibly dangerous, especially during Sundays when the flea market is operating. Our project is only funding existing traffic signals that need to be relocated during the construction. We are not funding any additional traffic signals that are being requested at this time. Just let's see. There's another question. Does the widening of the sidewalks on the north side of Melrose across from Fairfax mean the city isn't going to seek dedications anymore and make Melrose wider elsewhere? Isn't that why the north side is narrow? Sorry, I'm trying to keep up, but folks are still, and you know what, remember folks, you can always raise your hand too, because it's a little hard, sorry, it's a little hard for me to keep up with all of these questions that are coming through. You're still gonna be able to raise your hand and you can actually speak openly. But if you do feel more comfortable just typing, that's still totally fine. Let me get back to the question about the sidewalk widening. I'll have to read that a little further. From Donald Duckworth with the bid, can CD5 get the new crosswalks at Stanley and Orange funded for construction at the same time that this grant is constructed?
Unfortunately, no, we cannot speed up the funds. We've been looking at other options and we don't have any other options. We unfortunately have to be patient.
Alexander, we do have a hand raised by
Yes.
Pearson, if you want to take that.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm gonna go through a few more of the questions here, and then I'll do the hand raises if folks don't mind. John Gabalon has asked, can the community use the tennis courts at Fairfax as a running track? This is a private property question. Maybe afterwards, John, if you wouldn't mind speaking to the council office offline about that, that would be great. Jesse Harris has asked, I see that bike racks are listed as a possible street furnishing. Is installing more bike racks currently part of the plan for this project? This could help make the sidewalks more navigable for pedestrians battling abandoned shared mobility devices. Yes. So in further meetings, we are going to be talking about what the community wants to see in regards to parking, like bike parking, scooter parking, benches, trash receptacles, public art, etc. What do you want to see on your street? Again, we have a good chunk of money set aside for site furnishings. We have $330,000 to $400,000 set aside. So we'll talk in future meetings about that. But yes, bike racks are definitely being considered for Melrose. Okay. There's a question from Deanna Von Bonnen. I apologize for the name. How will you honor the history of Melrose as the city's oldest arts district? That's a great question. Again, future meetings, we really want to hear from you guys what you want to see on Melrose, what the aesthetic, what the feel, what the vibe is. I did not grow up near Melrose. I grew up in Sherman Oaks. Jeff didn't grow up near Melrose. There's a lot of folks who grew up in this neighborhood, who know this neighborhood, who have a lot of history that may really want to see something reflected in the wayfinding signage, the gateway signage, and the benches, and the bike racks, and the trash receptacles, anything. So we really want to hear in future meetings about what you guys want to see. So start even thinking about it now. So think in February when you come back to us, start coming to us with some ideas. We're really excited to hear them. Are there areas for food trucks? Right now, again, this is a pedestrian improvement project. That would be more of a transportation issue in regards to losing existing parking spots and dedicating them for food trucks. Debbie or Kevin, who could they speak to about that?
That would be a great thing to talk about with the bid. I mean, if you wanted to block off a street once a month, something like that, that's a great program the bid might participate in. And Kevin, as your field deputy, would be a great person to start with as well.
Yeah, the food truck thing can get a little bit complicated. We've been talking to the bid about some food truck issues. So are there areas for food trucks? I'm not exactly sure what the intention is, but I'll follow up with Della directly right now.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
And again, we'll try to answer. I'll hand type all the answers back into this too, and so you folks can have those answers. And we'll make a summary of answers also. We're going to track everything, so making sure everybody is getting the answer they want, they need. What consideration when a business owner doesn't want a tree in front of their business because it might block their signs, which is part of the fabric of Melrose facade? That's a very good question. We run into this a lot, actually, in regards to trees in front of businesses. If there is a business that is very, very adamant about not having a tree, we will not put it. I am being truthful, because we have actually had business owners kill trees, remove trees, illegally trim them, etc., because it's blocking their sign or it's creating a blockage, etc. That being said, learning from those lessons of folks who really are against trees, we've actually really been trying to work with businesses on what type of trees do work in an urban setting. What type of trees the ficus tree is great. It's a fantastic big tree, but it does block signage, it does lift sidewalks, etc. Jeff and I are going to be working really closely with you guys in the coming months on different tree options that are actually going to be more columnar, potentially more visibly open, faster growing, so we get that canopy higher up sooner. So all you see is a trunk and then a higher canopy, but then you're still maximizing shade for the sidewalk. So we're going to be working with the community, working with business owners on that, on what trees are going to be best for Melrose. If, again, Jennifer A. Gill has asked, if bike racks are being considered, how do we get them? We're going to fund them. The project actually can fund bike racks, which is great. Again, we have a chunk of money, $330,000 to $400,000 in funding just for the aesthetics, just for the furnishings on Melrose. So we can fund bike racks on Melrose. I think that's it with the folks who are going to write in. And I apologize if I missed any. I'm looking through a couple more here. Kim with the bid is saying that the bid is moving ahead with zigzag string lights from Vista to Gardner. So that's good to hear. So for folks who are asking about the string lighting, the bid is moving ahead with one block of the string lights, which is going to look fantastic, from Vista to Gardner. Let's see if I missed any other questions. Doesn't look like I missed any others. Let's see if there's any hands that have been raised here. Did I miss any hands here? Okay. Pearson, okay, I'm gonna open this up. Pearson, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Hi, Pearson. Would you mind just saying what your connection is with Melrose? That would be really helpful. And then give us your question and I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. My name is Pearson Blates. I'm the co-founder of Greenway Arts Alliance. I took right on Fairfax Avenue near Melrose. Also the Melrose Trading Post. Thank you again to the design team. Wonderful work. So I want to comment on, first of all, I want to say how happy I am to hear that the city's focus on improving sidewalks in between the bus stops. I really think that's critical, as well as increased lighting between the bus stops. I'm very concerned that if we don't focus on that, it's going to be hard to maintain all of the new work that's going to happen with the tree wells, with the bus stops, without the additional lighting and the safety that brings. I think it's tricky. So I hope we can all focus on additional lighting and improving those sidewalks. With that base, I feel like we can find community partners to maintain the beautiful work that you are talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. And looks like there's a question from Shelby. Shelby, can you hear me? You want to unmute yourself?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you, Alexander.
Yeah, no problem. If you could just state what your connection is with Melrose, that would be really helpful.
My name is Shelby Blacker. I live a block north of Melrose. I've lived in this neighborhood since 1965. My question is regarding your extensive outreach. I just want to make it known that there's a very vocal minority of progressive voters that seems to be able to get their message out there for what they want, as opposed to a silent minority of more conservative voters that never get this type of outreach. I can be talking to my neighbors as they walk by my house on Waring, and I ask them questions about, have you heard of Mid-City West? Have you heard of who our Zone 2 representative is? What do you know about Uplift Melrose or about Stanley Plaza? And they're all sitting there going, I've never heard of any of this. But as soon as I start talking to them, they're like, this doesn't sound like it's a good idea. So I think if you had better outreach to the neighborhood that included somehow more of the conservative voters in the neighborhood, either the temples that are in the neighborhood or the elderly that are in the neighborhood, you might get a better cross feel for what the neighborhood wants and what the neighborhood needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other folks who want to speak? We still have some time. Christina, here we go. Christina, can you hear me okay? You gonna unmute yourself there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi there, Christina. Can you just let us know where you're from or what your connection is with Melrose? That'd be great.
Sure. I live on the corner of Melrose and Spalding, so, right in the heart of it. And I just wanted to say thank you for holding this meeting tonight. It felt like it provided a lot of context that the survey I originally got, it felt like was missing from there. And I'll admit I was very apprehensive about this because of this survey. It seems like it was more to attract new business development than it was for the community, but I now see that is the exact opposite. So thank you for being so transparent. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, our pleasure. Thank you. Any other folks who'd like to speak? If I didn't answer your question in the Q&A box, now would be a good time. Don't be shy. We have some time still. Okay, Denny Weintraub. So Denny, can you hear me? You want to unmute yourself? Sorry, Denny, just bear with us 1 second. For some reason, it's not letting me. Here we go. Denny, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
Hi, Denny. Can you just let everybody know what your connection is with Melrose?
Yeah, I'm the president of the Business Improvement District since we've started that project back in 2013. I certainly want to say thank you for everybody participating tonight. Pearson, of course, is a board member, and Sylvia, my wife, is a board member and grew up in the area. So we have a real vested interest in seeing Melrose improve its appearance and what have you, and go back to some of the times when it really was considered an international center for tourists and locals to come and have fun. And we certainly want to sustain that, or at least bring it back. We've come on some hard times, and we're expecting some cooperation from everybody, including the residents. I don't want the residents to ever think that we're not going to listen to them or we're going to ignore them. I think, unfortunately, with some of the projects in the past, we were up against a little bit of a time constraint. But that being said, we will make every effort. And I think Debbie Diner Harris and certainly Kevin of the Councilman's District and Paul Koretz know that we want to make this a place that's going to be fun for everybody. And it's going to be someplace you're going to be very, very proud of. So I just want to applaud you there. Now, Sylvia had a question. Did you want to ask the question?
Yeah, the question I had was the when you're enlarging the area for the tree around the trees, my question was, what kind of protection or cover are you going to put around the tree so it doesn't get filled with debris, leaves, people throwing trash? Is there going to be some kind of grading, ironworks, or how are you going to protect that area so it doesn't attract debris and looks aesthetically pleasing?
Right. So right now, the funding for this grant is only for the typical standard decomposed granite, which is that sandy material. Cast iron, metal tree grates are something that would be additional. And actually, they're fairly costly. They potentially could be a couple $100,000 extra if that was something that was funded for Melrose. So if that was something that the BID or the neighborhood councils or the council office or the community groups wanted to fund later on, that still could happen. But right now, we are going to be putting in the standard decomposed granite and getting those trees more air room, more space to kind of breathe and grow. Was there any other questions for Denny or Sylvia?
Just, our concern, of course, was that, what Pearson had brought up as far as the lighting, just to make it safer. If there's any enhanced lighting besides the bus stops.
Right, and as we talked about, the grant only funds bus stop lighting. So right now, we only have funding for those bus zones and to do any utility relocations, et cetera. Additional lighting, we're going to look to our partners like the Business Improvement District or other community groups on funding these, like what we're talking about now, what Kim was talking about with the BID, on funding string lighting that could actually go across the street. And these type of elements like string lighting, they can happen now. Like they could go in now. Like you don't have to wait till 2023 till our project is finished to do it. It can happen now and we can work around this, which is a nice thing. You can start to see a little bit of change on Melrose, because I know everybody wants to see something happening on Melrose. And I feel so much for the businesses, the neighbors, everybody in this community right now, what everybody's going through just financially. So I know everybody wants to see something change in their neighborhood. So that could happen sooner, but our grant can't fund anything additional outside of the bus zone lighting. Thanks, guys. Any other questions from folks who want to speak? Otherwise, we can answer a few more questions in the chat box that have come through kind of last minute here. Any other questions you want to speak openly? Otherwise, we'll answer some questions again through the Q&A box. Okay. All right. Let's see, there's a couple more questions that came through. Philip Farha asked, will there be an area for live entertainment, music, public gathering, etc.? Conditions permitting, ? So again, right now we are only making the sidewalks to the standard width, the 12-foot standard width, which is enough room for pedestrians to pass by, some outdoor dining spaces, furniture zone, etc. We are not planning on additional wider spaces. For something like a live entertainment, music, a public gathering space, you would need a significantly larger, wider, either a plaza somewhere else or a significantly wider sidewalk. But at this moment, no, and our project does not fund that. Let's see. Someone asked, how do you submit a bid for furnishings? I'm not sure what they mean by how do I submit a bid if they're an actual company asking if they want their furniture on Melrose. But again, our project will fund the site furnishings on Melrose, which is great. Our project can fund new bike racks, wayfinding signage, gateway signage, kind of the fun aesthetics that are going to bring Melrose some more character. Our project can fund that.
Alexander, if the question is more about how do they suggest a specific location, is that still within the parameters?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Input?
Yes, definitely. Right now, we're just in this initial point of this meeting tonight was to explain what the grant is about and explain our scope of work. There's still opportunity for folks to say, hey, I noticed there's lots of people who hang out at Vista for whatever reason, or there's a lot of people who walk along this stretch or whatever. We want to hear that. And in coming meetings, we will work with you guys on locations of furniture, types of furnishings, the aesthetic, the feel, the vibe of Melrose, the new Melrose that people want to see.
And any of your comments coming in through the question and answer today, we're having recorded. So if you have that location you want to share with us, you can. Or I've sent around on the chat, I've sent the address of our website on this project. So you can reach Alexander and the team through that as well.
Yes, please. Hey, Jeff and I are very available. We're very open to talking about any questions you folks may have. And even if we can't answer them, we typically know who we can direct it to, whether it's DOT or street lighting or council office or the neighborhood council will at least point you in the right direction. Let's see if there's any other questions. Donald Duckworth asks, how much would it cost to add pedestrian lighting along the entire project area? What is the cost per light? Typically, a cost per pedestrian light is about $15,000 to $20,000 minimum. So again, right now, our project only has funding for pedestrian scale lighting at the bus zones, and we have almost $700,000 separated, set aside just for the bus zones alone. So if a good example would be, I have a project working on Western Avenue where we did have funding, additional funding for lighting on that corridor. It's almost, and that is half the size of this project. $2 million for the lighting on a project half the size to do pedestrian lighting. I'm not saying it's going to cost $4 million to do full-scale pedestrian lighting on Melrose, but it is a significant cost that is not funded within this current grant. There is a question from Isaac Fadlon asking, can Council District 5 commit to help fund the needed pedestrian lighting on Melrose? Debbie or Kevin, you want to answer? Sorry.
Yes, I was waiting for Kevin, but the council member has committed $1,000 to their project.
100,000.
No, $1,000 to the string lighting.
Oh, I see. Stream
Yes, $100,000 to the Melrose project, but just to the lighting is $1,000.
And that money should be in the process of getting transferred over. Kim should have more details because she's been communicating with our office manager about the finances.
And then there's a question from John Gabalon. There's already a slew of California sycamores and California fan palms, so keeping that lineage of trees would be great. And they are native and extremely drought tolerant to keep in mind, otherwise ginkgos and what Santa Monica now uses. Okay, so yeah, Jeff and I actually have done a full study of the trees on Melrose, and we've identified all the species on Melrose. So in coming meetings starting in February, we're going to start to talk about what the community wants to see on Melrose, and what's actually going to be for the longevity of Melrose and the longevity of the trees. Sometimes a tree may be great in the beginning, like ficuses people thought, and then years later they become a nuisance tree. So we really want to be looking at, are the California sycamores appropriate, or is it the London plane? Is it a different variety of palm tree? Are we looking at an evergreen tree that's more columnar and doesn't block signage? Are we looking at faster growing trees, et cetera? So again, we'll continue those conversations about tree species. We'll continue the conversations about site furnishings, aesthetics on Melrose. The community will have choice. You guys are going to have the opportunity to weigh in even more. Any other questions I may have missed? I want to make sure I got everything for you folks. Oh, sorry, Debbie. What did you say?
I see that Denny Weintraub's hand is up. I don't know if it's
I
again or
apologize.
still.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. I'm muting him. Denny, can you unmute yourself? I don't know. I apologize, Denny. I'm not able to unmute you. Denny, just send it a chat if you do have a question. Yeah, I apologize about that. And I don't believe there's any other questions. We have a few more minutes. If you guys do have any other questions, keep in mind, if there is anybody who missed this meeting, let them know. We are going to be doing another meeting in January, and we will be, then we'll start actually getting into the more fun stuff, getting into the details, colors, aesthetics, what you want to see on Melrose starting February, March. Any last minute questions? That's
Alexander, for everybody who's joined this meeting and registered to do so, they'll be on the list to get future announcements of the meetings. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, thank you for clarifying. Yeah, if you've registered for this, we now have your email address, and the only reason we want your email address is just to inform you about further meetings. I'm not going to send you city spam, nothing like that. It's just to get you, keep you in the loop about these meetings and make sure you're informed. Also, check our website occasionally. There may be updates there. There won't be any updates on our website between now and January. The only update is just going to be the announcement of our January meeting. After that, we will start to get updates. If there's questions that we need to go back to our partners at DOT or Bureau of Street Lighting and that we may not be able to answer during one of the community meetings, we may put an update there on our website, or we may do an update in our future meeting. So we are going to keep you folks informed. And again, we have about 6 months of outreach. So this is just the beginning. Okay. I think that's it.
I see a hand up from Shelby as well, Alexander.
Hi, Alexander. Can you hear
Hi
me?
there. Hi.
Just real quick, since you have a couple extra minutes, this Soro project that I was talking about earlier, they invited the whole community. They got about 30 to 40 people together. They actually, we can't do it now, but
Yeah.
they were showing us in a room design elements, and they broke us into groups of about 7 to 8 people per group.
Yeah.
And they told us to just envision Robertson the way we wanted to, and they gave us all these props to work with as far as median lanes and bus stops and so on and so forth. I don't know if there's any way to do that via Zoom.
Yeah.
It really brought the community in as far as what the community wanted. They also told us what each element would cost. So we
Yes.
had a better idea about if you want this many bus stops, you want this many curb widenings, on and on and on.
Yes, and that's a fantastic comment. Actually, we've had success doing breakout groups virtually. Martin, I'm correct, right? Where we are able to do that virtually in Zoom, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
So yeah, and that is a good suggestion actually. So, and Jeff and I have been tossing around ideas of how we're going to present. So we will consider that actually. I appreciate that comment. Because we can actually break out in groups of 8 and we can give you criteria. We can give you almost what we call like a kit of parts, which actually what we're planning on doing. When I talked about choice and option and why we have a range of costs for trees and site amenities and site furnishings is we are going to give the community choice of, and this isn't 100% determined yet, but whether it's a larger tree versus a different aesthetic gateway sign or a smaller tree versus a more artistic bike rack, etc. So we're going to be kind of comparing apples to apples and let the community choose on what they want to see and what's more important to them on Melrose. We have grant criteria still to meet. We have to do trees, we have to do site furnishings, we have to do the bus stop improvements, we have to do the sidewalk widening. But we do have that wiggle room, which is really nice to do something like what you're talking about, Shelby, these breakout groups, to let the community really talk amongst one another and what they want to see on Melrose. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Anybody else? I think that seems like we're wrapping up. Really appreciate everybody taking the time. We know it's Hanukkah, we know it's COVID, there's a lot going on right now. So we really thank you for all of your comments and your feedback. If you didn't get a chance to speak today, or if you think of a question in the middle of the night or something like that, email us, please. You have the email. And then I know there's a couple follow-ups at the council office. There's a couple folks who had some questions that are a little out of my realm and Jeff's realm that the council office may be able to help with. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Alexander and Jeff.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Have a great night, everybody.